welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10, 10 seasons of empowering entrepreneurs, 10 seasons of bringing you the issues and topics that are most relevant to you. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, a very special conversation with someone who's leading the changes here in India when it comes to the digital revolution and the metaverse. Ajit Mohan of Meta India. Also, in conversation with us tonight is Mayank Ruia of MAIA Estates. Joining us on the show here tonight is Ajit Mohan, Vice President Managing Director of Meta here in India. Ajit, thank you for taking the time to speak with us here on the show. I want to kick this off by really talking about payment gateways and how things have evolved, and it's become so much more acceptable. But outside of the metros, is the focus on vernacular just so much more? How's that being accepted? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I think a couple of things here, Sunanda. I do think, I mean, you know, I had the privilege of leading Hotstar and the early years of entertainment on the mobile, and one of my insights even at that point was that a lot of the commentators tend to make artificial distinctions between, you know, the small town consumer and the metro consumer. Of course, there are differences, but it's not that it was a gradation of sophistication or gradation where the small town consumer was less open to embracing innovation than the large town consumer. There were other factors at play, right? I think the kind of phone that you have when you access the internet, income, but that income can't, the reality is the whole income stack shows up in all its diversity, even in a city, even in a large city. So there's a lot more diversity in the country than can be, I think, reduced into the size of the town or city that you're a part of. And definitely, I definitely don't think your location is a proxy for embracing innovation or embracing digital platforms. I actually think a lot of the change is on the supply side, right? I mean, if someone wants to shop, I think a lot of it is about how do we make sure that the transportation and logistics infrastructure is in place for us to be able to deliver beyond the large cities, right? How can we, you know, a big change is for a lot of us living in a Delhi or a Mumbai or a Bangalore, there is expectation sometimes of even same-day delivery, right? I'm sure it's no different. Or delivery within a couple of days. I'm sure it's no different for someone in a smaller town. So I do think the bar keeps going up. They expect access to the same services, they expect the same speed, and they expect the same innovation. I think it's up to companies like ours and others in the ecosystem to make sure that we are building for that need. We are building for all of the diversity that exists in the country, and in that context, that opportunity is everywhere. I don't see a hierarchy here.
I also want to talk about how technology has evolved, Ajit. Who would have thought at one point that, you know, Facebook, when it started, Meta, of course, now would be used as a place where people can buy or sell things. That technology is changing the way people are and children are really accessing education. And I saw an earlier interview of yours where you said you can't bring up a child who's so disconnected from what's happening around them. But with that being said, I want to talk about the role of technology and the way it's really disrupted things. 2 or 3 sectors that you would like to call out through this answer for our entrepreneurs to say, this is what you should keep your eye on.
Yeah, I think let me kind of paint the opportunity that I see, and we spoke about it. I would characterize it as at a time when there is, you know, we have massive scale in terms of access to the internet. We have access to capital from around the world. I do think my big sort of call out would be for entrepreneurs to think about building businesses that solve for the depth and diversity of India, right? Rather than only looking for a sliver of it. I do think two areas where a lot of innovation can come out of India and will come out of India that will fundamentally solve for big challenges for the world at scale are in education and health.
Okay.
I think again, I think if you look at the diversity of the landscape here, both on the supply and demand side, I think it is ripe for fundamental disruption, and I'm sure it'll happen. Just as an example, I think this. I was having a conversation with a very young company, Rocket Learning, and it's a non-profit. But what they do is they're using WhatsApp to essentially trigger outside of school learning attached to Anganwadis in 5 states. So they're essentially using WhatsApp and connecting the teacher, the Anganwadi, essentially the Anganwadi workers kind of, playing the role of a quasi-teacher as well as teachers, and getting them to engage with their classes.
Sure.
And triggering homework, right? I mean, to use an old term, but fundamentally to make learning interesting. But they're using technology to do that at scale, right? They're using WhatsApp. They're building AI machines around it. I think it gives you a sense, on one hand, right? And on the other end of the spectrum, we have this partnership between WhatsApp and Jio, where we are trying to make it very easy for customers around the country to order from JioMart from within WhatsApp, right? So I think it gives you, even if I take an example of WhatsApp, the spectrum of innovation that can be driven, a non-profit educational model on one hand, and a partnership with a big retail network on the other. I really think the canvas is so wide, and there are so many places that are ripe for disruption. I do think ideas will come in the next few years. Sure. Across every sector, but I'm particularly excited about education and health.
Absolutely, Ajit. And, we do speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who are in the education and in the tech space. And speaking really of the changes that are happening, I want to talk at this point about data privacy. For entrepreneurs who are building businesses, who are scaling them, perhaps on platforms like yours, in a world that has become increasingly interconnected, what is the one thing that you would like to tell them about data privacy? Because we're looking now also at a hybrid model where businesses are okay with employees spending perhaps some part of their time working from home. Some days they're in office. So things have become so interconnected. In this world now, in this changed world, what is your advice for entrepreneurs on how they should be approaching data privacy, and your thoughts really on that?
I think two things for them to be aware. One, I think given that a lot of them will be consumers of our platform, and in many ways, some of them, like entrepreneurs, will be using a platform to drive growth for their companies. I think one thing to know is that privacy is now at the heart of how we build our products. I think the privacy principles are established. Every product, every feature on every product is now subject to a review in terms of does it comply with the privacy principles we have established for ourselves. And the bar has gone up dramatically. Yeah. And we are quite sincere about it. I think that's one thing to know. The other thing to know as a consumer is that the big shift that's happened in the last few years is how much controls are available to the consumer to decide how their data should be used, what they want in the public domain, what they don't want. I think it's worth, and we invest a lot of time and efforts on that to try and make sure that these controls are very visible and transparent to users. But that's the one thing that I would say. I think it'll be useful for everyone to kind of invest that extra few minutes to understand all the controls and the power that is now at the hands of users to get privacy and their own personal framework using these controls to where they want it to be. In terms of data and their own public visibility, public profiles, and their comfort with that. There's a lot more control on the available to users than there was even 3 or 4 years ago.
All right, Ajit. Thank you so much for your time here on the show. I'm going to slip into a short break. On the other side, Mayank Ruia of MAIA Estates in the hot seat tonight. Back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here in Leaders of Tomorrow. In the hot seat tonight, Mayank Ruia of MAIA Estates. So good having you here with us on the Leaders of Tomorrow, Mayank.
Thank you for having me, Sananda.
It's always good to speak to someone who's doing something different, who's innovating, and young entrepreneurs who are then able to talk to our fellow entrepreneurs, talk to our viewers to say, this is perhaps what you should look at. This is how I've been able to achieve the kind of success that I have. And one thing that really caught my eye about the projects that you do, apart from the property that we are at, of course, is I noticed you have some very marquee investors, including Mohan Pai, who've been quite interested in your project. Before we come to any of that, I want to take a step back and talk to you about why you decided that you wanted to be in this space, in the residential, commercial, in the residential construction, in the residential real estate space.
Well, I'll just spend a minute on my journey to that point, so it'll help make a little bit of sense of it. I was a finance guy by profession. I was a trained investment banker and private equity professional in New York City for several years. Moved back to India in '08 and did the same thing with Everstone Capital. From there, after moving back to India after about 10 years, I realized that I needed my own space to live in, and was blessed to have been able to make this space in our family's home in Bombay, where I built a little townhouse, if you will, ground plus 2 stories. In doing this, I discovered a passion I never knew I had. And actually, so did my cousin Atul Ruia, who then hired me into Phoenix Mills to run his residential business. That was the beginning of my career in residential real estate. And since then, MAIA Estates and the business that we do now. So I'm one of those lucky few where I discovered work and passion at the same time, and I was able to put them both together to really enjoy what I do every day.
Okay. I would love for you to call out some of the trends that are taking place as far as the luxury residential side of the real estate market is concerned. What did the pandemic do in terms of demand? Did it dent it at all?
I think the pandemic gave a real course forward for developers in what to develop, how to develop it, how to plan it, most importantly, and how to execute it, bearing in mind what the consumer mindset was at that particular point in time. Okay. But in general, I think most people in our field would say, and the numbers would suggest, with the public companies as well, that it's only spurred residential real estate forward in a fairly large way.
You're talking of space, and is space really such an issue or a constraint or top of mind really when it comes to the kind of clientele that you talk to? This property that we're sitting at, for instance, I understand the starting price is upwards of 13 crores. So you are talking to a very niche clientele. And my question really is, what insights can you give us about this specific market and how it behaves, and is it behaving perhaps any differently compared to how the rest of the market is behaving when it comes to demand?
Our focus here is first and foremost towards the people that have grown up in city-centric Bangalore. I draw a parallel to South Bombay, which is where I grew up, and so it was easy for me to make that parallel across to know what people would want living in the heart of a city where they've grown up and sort of spent a lot of their time. So here it was really about taking their existing lifestyles in larger homes, often multi-family members and sort of joint families, and taking it down and breaking it down into exactly enhancing what they most enjoyed about those spaces, and packing it up with a lot more amenities that then they could use and act as motivators to actually live here and make this a new community. So I think that was our first focus with this development. But of course, to marry culture, to marry the old world charm of Bangalore versus really the lifestyle and the quickness of lifestyle, technology, amenities, the focus on children, the environment, and really space is what we really tried to create here.
Okay. We've been doing a series of interviews here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, talking about the impact that the Russia-Ukraine war is having on different industries here in India, especially when it comes to input costs. For the real estate space, has there been any impact, and is it really reflecting in the kind of market that you are working in? Whether it's steel prices, cement prices, anything, and how does that perhaps, not for your company, but from an industry point of view, perhaps then reflect in the prices that you're offering your customers?
So Nanda, steel prices and cement prices are largely the same for everybody, and so therefore it impacts us as much as it impacts anyone else in our business or in other businesses that use it. As you correctly pointed out, steel prices at the retail level have doubled. Cement and therefore everything that these commodities are used for has also increased pretty dramatically. What this has done is, I think for the industry, any costs that were underwritten, obviously costs are underwritten with a little bit of buffer for minor market corrections and movements, but this has been diabolic. So it's absolutely been something that no one has been able to predict or forecast. So where it comes to projects and developments that are currently existing and underway, such as ours, unfortunately, there's a lot of absorbing that has to be done by the promoters of the project. Obviously, if the project is able to pass on a minor bit of this to the customer in future price increases, that's one way to mitigate the ongoing scenario, but it's difficult. I think for future developments, what will happen is I think people will start thinking about a slightly different paradigm. No one knows where this is going to settle. I don't think anyone has clarity on what the direction of this conflict is taking. But I think everybody knows that that prices might settle a little bit higher than what people are used to, led by oil, led by steel, led by the lack of logistics and exports and imports and all of that stuff. So I think there will be a little bit of repricing, and like in all other circumstances, as people we will evolve and adapt.
So you're saying repricing. How soon could we perhaps see that, say, correction in prices?
I think you're reading it in the press every day. Read something recently that said prices of homes should be expecting to be raised by 7 to 10%, depending on where you are and the categories of products that you play in. So I think it's already happening.
Have businesses in the real estate space learned any lessons from the pandemic and during the pandemic when it comes to, at least to whatever extent, shock-proofing their businesses? Whether it's rising input costs, and we were talking about that, housing loan rates have been easing up, but is it possible have small businesses in this industry really sort of learned some lessons from the pandemic, and maybe what your biggest learning has been, and therefore use it as advice for someone who's watching today's interview?
Sure. I think all of us have learned something from the pandemic.
Not just baking of banana bread. Yeah,
Well,
hopefully.
I wish I had learned to bake a little bit more than I did, but everyone's learned something. But I think if you're looking around, office leasing is picking back up, and I think people are generally coming back to work, because I think it's also forms a key part of life and routine to be able to wake up every day and go to work, right? See how technology has been able to bridge many divides in business. Now you're sort of compelled to think about how you can further use technology to move your business forward. And now also to reallocate resources for the new paradigm that is to follow. So I think in terms of advice, you said to people looking ahead, it's to really understand what people matter to them most, and they can't run their businesses without, but also to never use the human element, because at the end of the day, we are human beings. We need human connect to get out the best in us, and I think you see this with all team sport, where it takes a certain energy and a certain vibe to make the team win. I think it's really no different with businesses.
All right, that's all we could put into this part. If you have any feedback for us, or you have any questions that you want to send our way, you could send it on the contact details, which are going to come up in just a moment. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.